Welcome, everyone. Come one, come all. We are so excited to see you. I cannot believe a month has already passed since we were together. Come fully into the room. Bring your lunch, bring your snacks, bring your kombuchas, bring whatever you need to be good little students, attentive, present, and quiet. We have an amazing panel today. If not for any reason that we have a special guest, Janice, here. You'll figure out who that is in a moment, or at least through the time that we are together. There she is. Look at her. I want to rub her. Thank you, Janice, for being here, supporting us. Whatever you need to move confidently into this space and this time that we are going to be together, please go and grab that, run and get your chips, get your late lunch, because this panel is going to be amazing. People are still coming into the room, so while we're waiting for them, why don't you go ahead and turn on your camera? I want to see you. What are you doing? What are you wearing? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What part of the world are you joining from? Heather's sipping on something that looks healthy, Heather. Oh my goodness. Is that healthy? No? She says no. Oh my goodness, Larry and Susan are here. Jacob's here. Ravi's here. Bethany's here. Ravi's, is that almond butter or peanut butter? Peanut.
That's peanut butter.
Yes. Are we allowed to have that in this space? Are the allergens? Let us know. We are never allowed to have things in the space. Is that Kate KS? I totally think I follow you on social media. I do follow you on social media. We have a celebrity in the room, people. I just want you to, well, stop it. If I say you're a celebrity, that like makes you a celebrity. If you're not following them on social media, please do so immediately. Can you drop your handle in the chat for us? Absolutely. Have we gotten big joy? Do we have like actual celebrity show? It's like Oprah's basically here now. Love it. We're going to have a great show. So why don't we just delve in? Those people that are late, that's their fault. It's not Netflix. It doesn't start whenever we want it to. Welcome and housekeeping. Captions. If you go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, and at least that's where it exists for me, you can turn on CC, those closed captions, and have those running throughout the show. Little bit of power of Zoom that you can actually even change the language so that the captions will be interpreting into another language. Welcome, Kristen Beck. We also have live ASL interpretation happening throughout the show. If at any moment there is some sort of disruption in that interpretation, you will see me stop to make sure that all of our community is included at all times, but just be patient. We all are here to be a community together. And so sometimes slow down in order to make sure that we can be not just inclusive, but expansive. We are expanding our ways of being. If you haven't read our community guidelines, I really encourage you to. This can be a very different space for a lot of people. We speak very honestly, very openly, very authentically in this space. And sometimes that can bring up big feelings. It can also bring up little t or big T trauma. And I want you to just take a moment to notice it, breathe into it, let it move through that beautiful mind of yours, because thoughts can be transient, feelings can be transient, and then bring yourself back into present. We always call on Loretta J. Scott's framework, meaning that in this space, relationships matter. I'm going to say that again. Feel free to write that down. In this space, relationships matter, which means that we do not call people out. We can sometimes call off. If you need to call off and leave today and come back another time, that's completely fine. But we can call on and call in people. And that's what you're going to see us modeling always up on the panel. We will be recording, but even though your pretty face is on camera today, that doesn't mean you're on the recording. I'm sorry, we're just capturing the panelist and myself and our interpreters. But if you do come up at the end and ask a question, and I invite you to open up your mic and speak, you will find yourself on the camera. So go ahead and just like flick your hair up and do whatever it makes you feel, to feel that that video can live in perpetuity. At the end, please take a moment and answer our reflection questions. I know it's a survey, it's like a Yelp review, but we do read every single survey that comes in. I read every single survey that comes in, and that influences the guests that we invite, that influences the changes that we make in order to expand our community guidelines and the way that we create this space together. Your feedback matters, your voice matters to me. Our interpretation is provided by Pro Bono ASL. I just made that up. Can we make a commercial? Can you please help me make a commercial for Pro Bono ASL? Let's just try it. Pro Bono ASL. Damn, we nailed it, Joy. Cut. All right. If you are running an event, we invite you to reach out to the team at Pro Bono ASL and activate inclusion within your spaces. Think outside of your regular box and think about the ways that you can make your events more accessible. Already on Sojourn DEI, we have been learning so much from the people that have been using our app to enhance DEI at their organizations, that have been reaching out to senior consultants like me through the app in order to bring DEI managers into your organization. If you are a small or mid-sized business and you want to really take your DEI and your organizational design efforts to the next level this year, please register, become a member, subscribe to Sojourn DEI, and you might all of a sudden find me in your inbox. I promise to wear shoes. Let's take a breath together. Deep inhaling. Sadie Schnitzler got my joke. And deep exhale out. The question is, am I wearing shoes right now? The answer is no. Look at this panel. Oh my God. Sometimes I don't even want to speak. I just want to stare at their pictures. Wow. But you want to hear them speak too. That's why you showed up. All right, let's meet them. Welcome to the virtual couch. Taejas Subramanian. They are a 16-year-old non-binary child of, also joining us on the virtual couch, Jaya Ramesh. They are neurodivergent, diagnosed with ADHD at 8 years of age. They attend a public high school and work part-time at a preschool. They are a musician. They create digital art, write short stories, and enjoy hiking. And right now, Taejas, lots of people are questioning their life decisions and wondering why they're not also doing all the things that you are doing. But we'll get into that in just a moment. Everybody, please welcome Taejas to the virtual couch. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Hello there.
Taejas, as we set the tone, the tenor for this space, a lot of people are maybe wondering, why is it that we might talk about parenting as it relates to neurodivergence? Or why would we invite like young people and want to hear their opinions? What, like young people have opinions? I'm joking. Taejas, what do you want them to know? What do you want them to hear? Why does your voice matter in this conversation?
I think from my experience being parented, I think there's tends to be a disconnect between people of older generations and their ideas surrounding neurodivergence, and people of younger generations and their ideas surrounding neurodivergence. And I think as we kind of go through the stage and learn more and more about what does it really mean to be neurodivergent, younger people tend to, I guess there tends to be a disconnect between that. And I think unlearning like a lot of older traditions about parenting really requires younger people to share their experiences.
Oh, yes, yes. This is where I wish I had a mic and I could just go, yes. I think the workshop is over. Taejas just nailed it. Are we all ready to go home and drink our big kombucha? Yes, thank you. This is the discussion we are going to have today, which Jaya Ramesh has been working to raise this beautiful human. They are a psychotherapist in private practice on the unceded and stolen lands of the Duwamish, Coastal Salish, Stillaguamish, colonially known, as Seattle. We live in that same place together, Jaya. finds joy and meaning in her relationships as a mother, spouse, sister, daughter, friend, auntie, and parent. She is a caste-privileged, neurodivergent Indian immigrant working to disentangle from and dismantle the grips of colonialism, supremacy, and capitalism. Definitely check out Jaya's private practice. Jaya, can you expand on this beautiful offering that this beautiful human that you brought into the world just expressed? Why is this discussion important? What do we need to already be opening our minds to as it pertains to parenting neurodiverse children, reparenting parents as a neurodiverse child? What's your offering?
First, thank you so much for hosting this and having us all on today. And I'm also just really beaming with pride hearing Taejas speak. To speak to your question, I think that anytime there is quote unquote a deviation from what is accepted socially as the norm, put that in big quotes, right? We're presented, I think, with an opportunity to really consider and investigate the messages that all of us have inherited. And for me personally, with Taejas as my firstborn, having a child that was diagnosed with ADHD and giftedness at the same time, really set forth that in motion about unlearning the messages I received about what it means to be human in this world. And parenting then really is a site where I feel that supremacy, ableism, capitalism, the colonial project, all of that, it's one of the first sites that we encounter where we are as parents really tasked and enlisted by these systems to produce the ideal citizen. And having a child who is neurodivergent and then to later also find out I'm neurodivergent and who is gender fluid, right? All of the shoulds and all of the messages about what is acceptable come into sharp relief and really begin to question that.
Yes.
And to Taejas's point, we have to learn from our children. I think and that's why I'm so glad that, Taejas and Toren are both here.
Yes. Oof. There were lots of big words there. This is Lindsey that we're going to have to unpack. So everybody stay tuned. Jaya just dropped like 15 hugely technical terms. We're going to break it down for you. Oh, this is going to be a delicious discussion. Meet Destiny Huff first. Destiny is a neurodivergent military spouse, doctoral candidate, and mother of 2 neurodivergent boys. She runs a private practice as a licensed professional counselor and certified trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapist in the mental health field. She also runs Destiny Huff Consulting, everybody go and Google it right now, and is a neuroaffirming special education parent advocate and IEP coach who provides trainings on autism, ADHD, and neuroaffirming practices. Destiny, first and foremost, can you help us contextualize what is neurodivergence? It seems to suggest that there's some sort of thing called neurotypical, which we can all laugh about later. But what is this term that we use, this neurodivergence?
So when we talk about neurodivergence and when we talk about neurodiversity, what we're really looking at is that neurodiversity is saying that our brains all operate differently. So those of us that are, for example, autistic and ADHD, the way that we conceive things and think is differently from those that are not autistic and ADHD. So we're really just talking about different brain types and the way that individuals think. And so there's different neurodivergences though. And that's where people kind of get stuck, is that they'll say, oh, someone's neurodivergent just because they're autistic or just because they're ADHD, but there's also dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Tourette's, tic disorder, anxiety. So it's all these, there's so many. And I always say that it's an exhaustive list. And I think the more that we learn, the more that we recognize how many different types there are, because we know that I know this is a mental health professional, but anytime we start talking about mental health diagnosis too, we're talking about chemical differences in the brain. And that's what gets into that neurodiversity and neurodivergence piece.
Wow. Did everybody, the terms that Destiny listed, did everybody have those on their bingo card? They knew all of those, or did you learn something new already today? Yes, you're welcome. Thank you to Destiny for being here. Meet Toren Wolf, an autistic teenager who is known for his social media presence on platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Joy has had so many celebrities here over the past couple of months. You all won't be able to get into this show soon. I'm just saying. Like, they're showing up in the audience now. Stop it. Toren posts videos sharing insights into their shared experiences with autism and ADHD, as well as reminders of love and self-care to their audience. He also shares poems and songs he has written with his mom. I've danced to one of those, and recently published a children's book about accepting differences called Peggy, the Square Peg. Toren Wolf, thank you for being here. As we enter into this conversation, Toren, what has been one of the things that you have noticed the most in your social media presence, in the community that you have built there? What is one of the things that people misunderstand about autistic teenagers?
Things that they misunderstand. I may have to think on that one for a minute.
Think on that one in a minute. We'll come back to that question. I'm going to invite your mom up onto the stage. Welcoming Serenity Wolf, who recently received her diagnosis of autism and ADHD around the same time last year after 48 years of being undiagnosed. For Serenity, learning about her neurodivergence has been a revelation. It has provided her with valuable insights into herself, allowing her to understand and accept herself with newfound compassion and forgiveness. Serenity, I watched recently a video, a post that you had made, and it was so vulnerable watching as you navigated your own, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but anxiety, maybe nervousness around this diagnosis. What has being diagnosed at this later stage of your life meant for a new level of self-love?
Thank you. This is Serenity. Let's see. I would have to say that it has given me the ability to look at my past and my present through a completely new lens. It has allowed me to give myself grace where I was unable to before, allowed me to realize that I'm not just a broken person, but that I'm a person with differences, and that it's okay for me to ask for accommodations and help when I need it. That's something I was never confident in doing before.
Toren, I wanted to return to you. What has been one of the things that you've learned about what people don't understand about being, one, a teenager, but two, an autistic teenager?
This is Toren. So something that I've noticed that people seem to just assume about autism and ADHD and certain other conditions is that people can just control their stimming at will, and thus not doing so is a conscious and damaging choice. But from my experience, for most people, stimming is not something you can easily, if at all, control. I've learned to mask enough that I can sometimes, with extreme difficulty, control my stimming behaviors, and if I can't, and if I don't want to be disruptive, I make sure to remove myself from others and whatever I would otherwise be disrupting. I make sure that everyone is comfortable. But there are some people who stim who can't control it, and I don't think they should be blamed for. I'm sorry.
You're doing great, honey.
Take your time. We're in no rush.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Brian, Art.
Thank you, brain. My brain farts all the time, just saying.
Are you okay?
You almost made me choke on the water.
Toren, I have a question for you. What is stimming? Some people may not know what that is.
What is stimming? Let me think, I guess. I suppose stimming could be defined as a comforting or self-regulating behavior that certain neurodiverse people do. I'm not good at explaining things.
I think that was beautiful.
Lindsey, that was perfect. That was perfect. I want to
It is-
invite. Oh,
Stimming is
go ahead.
repetitive behaviors. I apologize. This is Serenity. Stimming is generally defined as repetitive self-soothing behaviors, such as, hand flapping or finger flicking, or repetitive noises such as little hoots or grunts or throat clearing, spinning, hopping, twirling your hair, shaking your legs. There's so many different ones, and everyone does it to some degree. Neurodivergent people just do it a lot more. That's what you wrote in your thing.
Yes, yes. Everybody who watches this show knows that I'm constantly playing with my hair, and I have attempted to stop, and it's never going to happen. Taejas, Toren used another word there. What is masking?
This is Taejas. I think for me, masking, at least, because I think it shows up different in every neurodiverse person. For me, masking is the act of trying to hide certain neurodiverse behaviors or sometimes emotions to be more normal and regulate yourself, I think. So like if you've sometimes like if there's a really strong emotion that is hard to control, masking would be the act of like trying to calm yourself down and present like nothing really is going on the outside when it is there on the inside.
Yeah. This is Lindsey. Toren and Taejas, I'm wondering, in your experience, and I'm going to speak as Lindsey, growing up as a little Black girl in all white spaces. In that situation, in that environment, I was different. I was considered the other. And I often found that while my parents loved me, while my parents even shared the same identity as me, in this case being Black, there was often kind of a over concern or an over energy put into making sure I was appearing normal. Even though they didn't want to do it, it would come out. Is that something that sometimes comes up in the relationship of being a neurodivergent child, in that age gap that you were talking about, Taejas, that your parents want to be supportive, they want a different world, but they also grew up in a world where neurodivergent children were made fun of? Does that come up at all for you, Toren and Taejas?
This is Taejas. I can offer a little bit. I think when I was a lot younger in like elementary school and I didn't really know how to mask. I had a lot of like fidgets, I guess. Like I would hum like excessively, or my hands would just kind of be all over the place. And I think my parents did try and curtail that a little bit, because it was annoying to others or like invasive, I think. And so I think definitely when I was younger, that was definitely a thing that happened. And I think also, I guess, through peers at my school, that I got feedback that I was like the annoying kid. I think that kind of just, I developed like just emotion around stimming, I think, and that kind of caught itself.
Yeah. This is Lindsey. Toren, any thoughts on that?
Hmm.
I think that this is Serenity. I definitely remember doing that to you as well when you were younger, especially around Toren had a lot of facial tics that would get him a lot
Still
of
do.
bullying and stuff. And I worked with him really hard on reducing those before I really understood that that was not something I should be, messing with him about. I tried really hard to do it as kindly as possible and to just make him aware of it. But yeah, I was really worried about him getting bullied and stuff. And that doesn't feel good to face now. But yeah.
This is Lindsey. Jaya, did you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just feeling really very tender for the kids and also really just feeling tender for us as parents too. And I'm just sort of holding, yeah, the complexity of it all, because I think when you're put in the role of a parent, your job is to protect and care for and meet the needs of your kid all at the same time. And also like communicate that you love your child as they are. But then, yeah, there's a survival piece, especially when I think about that, when what you were saying, Lindsey, right? That intersectional lens of how does the world read us, right? How does the world read a Black child growing up in a white space, or us as Indians we're sort of framed by this model minority thing of, right? Like we perform and we're just, on it and there's nothing ever wrong with us, right? So there's so much complexity to this. And then my heart just aches hearing, right, like the impact of the way that I've shown up, or, other parents might have shown up with their kid and trying to correct a behavior to fit into a world that wasn't designed for us, right?
This is Lindsey. This is bringing up for me Leticia Nieto's work on the target rank maturity model. And the first lesson we often teach our children is safety. How to be safe in a world that is targeting them because of their difference. And as parents, we want to love and protect our children, and we are aware that the world is after them in many ways. Destiny, Jaya introduced a word there around intersectional identities. How does the intersection of neurodivergence, ethnicity, race, the type of neurodivergence, how does that all even more thoroughly impact the relationship between child and parents and society and the ways that they move through our education system?
No, this is Destiny. And that's a great question. And it really, so going back to that piece of intersectionality, when we talk about intersectionality, we're looking at anyone, neurodivergent or not, as a whole person. And every piece of them that's incorporated into that. So how I always explain it to people is I am a late diagnosed autistic and ADHD Black cis hetero, individual. And so there's a lot of layers to that. And then with the intersectionality piece, you also incorporate upbringings and where individuals were raised. That has an impact because we know in the South it's yes, ma'am, no, sir, yes, sir. We know that in some Asian cultures, it is inappropriate to make eye contact with individuals when it comes to that respect, when people start talking about that component. And so when we talk about that in education, we're looking at the way in which we approach individuals with disabilities and really understanding first that it's a spectrum. We talk about autism spectrum, but I always say that any disability has a spectrum, and it presents differently on different days at different times. And the other side of that is looking at that racial and ethnic and cultural background and the perception. And so in the education system, we know historically diagnosis for autism, for example, were based off of white boys. And so because of that, we have struggled, and we are just now learning in the past few years to understand how autism presents in girls, how autism presents in Black boys, how, we're struggling to understand that. So in the education system, that has become this mislabeling. And so we talk about neurodivergence. My oldest son is autistic, and they try to label him as oppositional defiant disorder, which is when we don't comply with rules, we don't comply with requests, we seem to be disrespectful towards authority. And me being a mental health professional, I was like, I work with children and I know that's not true. But they were fighting me on that. And it took involvement of a Black clinical psychologist and a Black educational psychologist to formally diagnose him with autism for me to get others to begin to understand what we're seeing. And that led to my diagnosis. So in education, you're really looking at challenging biases, stereotypes, and prejudice.
Wow. This is Lindsey. Serenity, I feel like whenever we have conversations like this, it's always framed from here are the problems that you're dealing with, you poor bereft individual, and how are you overcoming it? May I ask, Serenity, what is the beauty of your experience moving through the world?
The beauty of my experience? I'm sorry, this is Serenity. The beauty of my experience moving through the world. Do you mean like, what about the way I experience the world is beautiful? Or like,
I'm open to anywhere you'd like to take it, dear friend.
I think that would be easier for me to answer if I was referring to him. It's really hard for me to answer that about myself. So I'll talk about if that's okay with you. Is that okay with you? Okay. I'll talk about what I think is beautiful about him moving through the world. I think he notices things that other people don't. I think he thinks of things and comes up with things. It just takes him a lot longer than other people. And the things he comes up with are profound and extraordinary. I think he has so much care and tenderness and warmth that is missed often by people because they don't see past what they perceive as awkwardness or stimming or whatever. I don't know if that made sense.
This is Lindsey. That made perfect sense to me. And I see lots of people in the audience smiling. They're relating.
Okay, good.
Toren?
Not sure if I'm...
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. This is Toren. I think I've got the idea of If you can't speak for yourself, then I shall. You are easily one of the most determined, intelligent, just like what's the word? Unshakable people I've ever met. What you do for the other kids is amazing. What you do for me is amazing. What you do for dad is amazing. Just
Thanks.
you're amazing.
Thank you. That was very sweet of you. Thank you.
I'm not good at doing things.
He's a great guy.
Have a plushie.
Thank you.
Plushie.
I will have a plushie.
Nice security blanket, a security plushie.
This is Wilbo.
Wilbo?
Yes.
Welcome, Wilbo. I see that Janice left the stage.
Oh, yep.
She's actually she's just right here.
And I've got one too now.
This should be a new thing where we give cats when people join the panel, Joy. Take a note.
They're really helpful.
Taejas, let's keep the trend going. What's one of the unique benefits of having a mother that has also been diagnosed with neurodivergence?
I think it's allowed us to lead to some, this is Taejas, by the way, sorry. It's allowed us to lead to some really informative conversations. I think having someone I know who cares deeply about me and is there by my side and willing to explore the universe that is neurodivergence and its differences in different people, I think has been just an amazing experience. And I think without my mom and my dad just being there to be open and listen, I would not have gotten this far.
Mrs. Lindsey. Jaya, what is one of the unique experiences of having Taejas as your teenager?
One might be too limiting for me. I often say that Taejas is my greatest teacher, and shows me all the ways that I continue to live in a prison, even though the exit's right there, because I see Taejas steps out of it and just living boldly and freely. And I just hope to get there in my lifetime. Yeah.
This is Lindsey. Damn, everybody write
sorry.
this down.
I keep forgetting to say my name, and I think it's nervousness. So yes, I will. This is Jaya, by the way.
This is Lindsey. Thank you, nervousness. This is Lindsey. Destiny, in your professional capacity, what can be then the challenges when children do not have a support system at home with a shared identity? I have the sense that joining us on the call today is at least one parent who is in that prison. They're struggling to accept their child as they are, as opposed to how the world wants them to be.
This is Destiny. And I just want to start by saying I wrote on a sticky note so I remember to say this is Destiny. So that's how I remind myself. Because I'm in my office. So because I knew I would forget. I was like, I'm not gonna remember that. So I think one of the biggest things is that it's a difficult process, right? I know before my son was diagnosed and then before I was diagnosed, we were really trying to fit, what's that saying, like a square peg into a round hole. We were really trying to make my son be all the things that the school wanted him to be. And at the same time, realizing that it was hurting him and hurting us because he was no longer our happy, excited child. And so I think one of the issues and I think I'm answering your question because I kind of spaced because I talked about the sticky note. But I think when we talk about the education system for parents, you know, when you're trying to support your child, really listening to and learning from what they need and then advocating in that space for them. Whether they vocalize, gesture, use AAC, they're writers, you know, honoring all forms of communication and really hearing what benefits them. Because a lot of times in the education system, I have noticed that they accidentally try to do the same thing and they don't even know like the damage or hurt that they're doing. And so they just have like this set of guidelines and this is what we do. And so this is what we do. Just like as soon as they hear a child's autistic, they're like, well, this is what we do because they're autistic. And it's like, no, it's a spectrum, it's different. And so I have a good friend who her child also has apraxia, right? So his supports and needs in the school setting are going to be different from my son, who is very verbal and able to communicate his needs verbally, right? So it's going to be different when we look at support. So I think really listening to your child. Somebody else had mentioned this too in the chat, I believe, and you know, you learn better, you do better. A lot of us, this is trial by fire. Like, you know, looking back, my husband and I were like, we would have handled that a lot differently if we would have known that he was autistic, if we would have known how to support him. And then what we've done, our youngest child is not autistic. He's ADHD. We have adapted our approach with him so much because of his brother. And so I think you have to give yourself grace, but also be willing to learn. And that lived experience is so important. So I tell parents, like when you're trying to really learn about something that you're not familiar with, you know, a lot of people talk about social media and social media can be a negative place. And, you know, you have to watch, you know, your interaction and engagement in that regard. But there's so many accounts out there, like us on this call, you know, of lived experiences of what we're going through. And that's how you learn and support your child. You have to hear from those that have lived it to do that.
Yes, this is Lindsey. You're introducing a very rebellious idea here, though, Destiny. I'm not sure that you really are aware of this rebellious, fault shifting, the world might crumble idea that you've just introduced, which is to listen to our children. Let it drop for a minute, right? Well, Bethany's going, oh, right. We live in a society where children have no agency. We don't like children in the United States of America. If you're joining in the United States of America, we very clearly do not like children. We do not think they should have opinions. We do not think they should have a voice. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about the laws and how flexible it is, the definition of corporal punishment. You can hit a child and people say, I'm doing it because I love you. If you're not reading Bell Hooks's All About Love, pick it up this weekend, right? We don't like children. Jaya, make it make sense. What is this idea that we listen to our children, to our teenagers? Well,
This is Jaya. I took Destiny's advice and wrote myself a little note. So I'm learning. I think you're speaking to the adultism that is in our society that is so woven, right? That kids, you know, somewhere I read this, that kids learn oppression first at home. And that it is devastating to think that as parents that we teach that, right? That we power over a lot due to the fact that we ourselves are afraid and we don't have spaces to process and to be held in community. And so that fear morphs into powering over and not listening to our kids. And then the cycle just sort of replicates, right? And so I always sort of sit with this question of what also needs to shift structurally or culturally for us to be able to view children as having innate wisdom, that they know that they're actually magic, and that they have also knowledge from a different field. Because I think as we get into adulthood, we get into this like we got to work, we got to do this, right? We lose play, and children's language is play, and play is, yeah, it has so much information there. And I know I'm guilty of that. Like, I don't think I've done a great job of that, and I'm learning to do more and more of listening to what my kids are saying, and what they're saying not only about themselves but about the world, right? And to trust that I don't actually know, that my path or my way isn't actually the right way. So, but that's scary. It's scary. So I'm not sure if I fully answered your question, Lindsay. I just kind of, my mind did its thing, mind mapping thing. So I just went with it.
This is Lindsay. I would like to open the invitation that everybody on my panel today just lets their mind wander wherever it would like to wander, and that we accept that that is exactly where we're meant to go.
Beautiful.
Thank you. This is Lindsay. Taejas and Toren. I'm like old now and, like basically dead. So I would really like to understand this world that you imagine. What is our future? What is the future of society as you see it?
That's a very big question to ask.
We're drinking.
I've heard you answer this one before.
Oh, yeah. You mean assuming we don't blow ourselves up?
Yeah.
Assuming we
Yeah.
don't blow ourselves up, Toren, and the planet is not dead, what do you imagine?
Well,
More acceptance.
my brain just turned off.
I think your brain just turned off.
Technical difficulties. Are you okay?
Yes, she's just very happy. Sorry. There are some big
So-
difference happening over here.
This is Toren. I'm sorry. Can you ask the question again?
Thank you. The question is, what is the future that you imagine? Qualified by assuming we don't blow ourselves up and the planet is dead.
All right. Well, do you want me to, sorry, this is Toren. Do you want me to say what I think might happen or what I hope might happen?
I want to hear what you hope might happen.
Thank you. Well, I've never really thought of this.
Hmm.
Can you help me out? Of course. I remember you saying once that you had hoped that people would be more accepting. Do you remember talking
Yes,
about
thank you. I need a cue.
that?
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, so I hope that with how relatively recent the acceptance of neurodivergence into society has been, that it will just keep progressing further. We as a species will gain a deeper understanding, and maybe we won't have to deal with such extreme levels of just. I'm sorry, I'm having
ignorance and
ignorance. Thank
intolerance.
you. I'm sorry, I'm having a brain
okay.
moment right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honey.
Thank you, brain moment.
Okay, I've still got nothing.
You had plenty. That was beautiful.
Hmm. This is Lindsey. Taejas, do you want to build on what Toren said?
This is Taejas, sure. I think for acceptance part, I think the way, especially Western society, we tend to treat things as very like a dichotomy of there's either the way you're supposed to be or the way you're not supposed to be. And this is coming especially from a background of being neurodivergent and being queer. I think if I have a hope for society and where it all goes, I think if we stop trying to be so binary and stop trying to categorize and diagnose based on you're either this thing or you're that thing, I think that's kind of where I hope we go, in a way where we allow people to be the other.
Yes. Yes, this is Lindsey. As you both are saying that, Toren and Taejas, what's coming up for me is like, what's the block? What is the thing that's really holding us back in your view? Is it just old people? Is it systems and structures? Is like in your hope, Toren, in your hope, Taejas, what needs to shift? What needs to change to get us there?
Okay. This is Toren. I personally, I could be completely wrong about this, but what I think is that all those things you listed do contribute, but there is also something just in the human mind. We are, at least to some degree, xenophobic creatures. So I think we are innately not that good at accepting difference.
Wow. Wow.
This is Taejas.
Also,
I would
Say again,
This-
Taejas?
I just wanted to say I agree with that. I have some thoughts, but I'll let you finish.
I was just going to say something random. Jaya, Destiny, are you in the same room? I'm looking at the thing right here, and it
Oh,
looks
no.
like you're in the same exact room.
No, it's
The
just the white background.
It does totally look like they're in the same room, just like flowing into it. Yes. If you all are secretly in the same room, cough twice.
I think it's the therapist in both of us. We are both therapists, so.
Same color furniture, same color paint. Same sweater vest. Taejas, you had an idea.
I'm trying to remember where I was on my train of thoughts real quick.
Toren said xenophobia holding us back. People often just default back to that. And you said, I agree.
Yeah, this may be a bit pessimistic of me, but I feel like a lot of evolutionary responses that we developed to deal with the unknown worked really effectively when we were living in caves and had to fight off animals, but they don't work when we have to deal with emotion. I think when you see something new, we go into I guess not like every new thing, but a lot of like the fight or flight response of this is new, how do we treat it? Is it let it be or do we attack it? And I think that kind of mindset that worked in a tribe-based society, that worked in a non-globalized industrialized society, doesn't help when we can, like, when all information is spread across the globe and when we aren't in life or death situations every single day anymore.
Wow. So as you two are saying that, Toren and Taejas, it's like, thank you for your patience. The thought is forming. When you're my age, maybe we have this much more global society. Facebook/Meta rules the world. As it pertains to neurodivergence and school systems and work, and the possibilities of no longer thinking of neurodivergence as some sort of other to be feared, what's the opportunity that we're missing now? Like, what do you want to tell to all these old people that joined, they're like in their organizations and they're going to leave here and go to some silly meeting and, probably just make things worse. It's like, what is the opportunity that we could be embracing now, Taejas and Toren? Like, Toren, I see you all the time on your social media. You're talking about this. Taejas, you're talking about this. What do we need to start doing right now to move in that direction?
People just need to stop being so judgmental. I'm sorry, this is Serenity. Sorry.
Say more,
Oh,
Serenity.
I'm scared.
I'm sorry, I spooked you.
Say more. Stop
I
being
just-
so judgmental.
Just need to stop immediately judging what they don't understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, they, like. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
From what I'm going to pick up from what this is Toren. From what I've witnessed and what I've seen among humans, our typical response to pretty much anything is immediately to plaster our opinions over it, to judge, to categorize, to label. That is, I'm not sure if it's societal or something more innate, but is there.
It's there.
This is Lindsey. To be fair, there's probably people on this call right now who have never been in a space that was specifically designed, intentionally thought about to cater to Toren, Serenity, Destiny, Taejas, and Jaya's comfort and not theirs, right? And they're struggling in this moment to be present because they're so used to the world that is for their neurotypicality.
Yep.
Mm, mm. Taejas,
Absolutely.
Jaya, did you want to jump in here?
This is Taejas. In your question, you mentioned school systems. I have the unique privilege of being on my school's gifted education board. And we're talking about how do you diagnose giftedness and why are there racial inequities when giftedness should in theory be similar across the board, or rather like it should be proportionate to the actual amount of people in our district. And I think a lot of it is to reduce some of that. There need to be the voices of the people it affects. It shouldn't be old white lawmakers in rooms deciding the fate of 300 million people. There needs to be representation. That was what helped start the American Revolution. There needs to be representation, and I think that's one of the key steps in getting to a point where we can start to make change.
This is Lindsey. Taejas, for some people that would be, they're like, what? This society was meant to be founded by a diverse set of people creating a representative government. Somebody just had a moment.
This is Jaya, and I just wanted to follow up with something you were naming, Lindsey, and I think I'm also just sort of noticing that for myself is that the way I guess we're all sort of just showing up, may feel very different for people. And I'm just sort of tracking that in my own sort of internalized ableism around that. And I'm just like really deeply appreciating just Toren and Serenity's like that community support of like holding each other, that we don't have to be individually on and put together and figure it out. And really appreciating how you're also just holding this space right now for us to just come as we are, you know, and how revolutionary that feels, while it is so just how it should be.
Mm. 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 I'm getting the sign that I'm supposed to stop talking to you all now and like open it up for other people to ask questions, which thank you, Joy. Destiny, Toren, Serenity, Jaya, Taejas. I'm going to open it up now for people to drop questions to me in the chat or to open up their mic. First, by raising your virtual hand so I can see it. What are your questions, community, for this amazing panel who's offered themselves to you today? Sadie?
I'm asking for a friend who was not able to be here. She helped develop the question, but it is 100% a question that I have also. As a neurodivergent parent with a kiddo, also neurodivergent, can you speak to practicing neuroaffirming parenting while honoring our own neurodivergence when we, the parent, might be overstimulated ourselves? There's hacks, mantras, strategies, coaching, books, like down to here, all of it.
This is Lindsey. Serenity, Jaya, Destiny, take the lead.
This is Serenity. That is a tough one. I, having only been recently diagnosed, can only speak for the last less than a year, in which time it has been wonderful being able to talk to Toren about our mutual conditions and issues and find shared ground there. And now I can let him know that, you know, I'm feeling really overstimulated and I have the language for it, and he can equate that to something that he experiences, and we can come together a lot more easily than we were able to in the past. So I'm not, I hope I'm answering your question good enough. Yeah. I think in regards to my littles, unfortunately I was not aware, and I was constantly overstimulated, and I just wish I had known. I just feel that would have made such a tremendous difference in being able to give myself that allowance to say, I'm really overstimulated and that's okay, and I need to ask for help, and I need to step away for a minute. Or instead I just pushed and pushed and pushed and powered through, and that destroys us. So I feel like I've totally lost your question. I'm really sorry.
Oh no, you just, shared the similar experience that we have. Yeah. Thank you, Serenity.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oh, this is Destiny. I'll speak to that too. So I also have only had my diagnosis for maybe going on 2 years now. Yeah, I think going on 2 years now. And I have littles, so they're only 5, it'll be 8 next week, or 6 next week, and my 7-year-old just turned 8 last week. But one, I'll drop some names of books in the chat, because being a therapist, I also have a lot of books, and so I have a lot of book names I definitely recommend. But I think what Serenity is really speaking to is really truthful, in that part of getting my diagnosis really helped me see the reason why I was so overstimulated and not handling things the way that I guess I thought other parents were handling things with their children. But one of the things that has really helped me is having conversations with my children about their neurodivergence in mind. And I think one of the things that I think is great about autism is that often we don't see a hierarchy, right? So we don't often see like, you're the adult, I'm the child. Like society really kind of implants that into us. And so because of that, I didn't realize that as I was raising my children, I was very like, I would tell other adults, like, don't talk to them like babies, talk to them like people because they're people. And I didn't realize that was part of like my autism. And so I've always talked to my children like that. And I've always told them like, mommy's tired, mommy's stressed, mommy's this, mommy's that. And part of that has really helped us because they see it. And so one of the big things for me was my youngest saw me laying down because I was afraid I was heading towards a burnout period. And I was like, I'm not resting enough. And he said, Mommy, you're laying down. That is so awesome. Can I lay with you and relax? You never relax. And I feel like because of how I'm raising him, we were able to have that conversation and I was able to go, yeah, I don't lay down. And so he was like, so then I did it 2 days in a row and he was like, oh my gosh, like you did it another day. But I think that it's really just accepting it and having that communication and then trying to educate them because I get asked this a lot on their neurodivergence. And then they will be receptive when they're ready to really understand it. So my oldest finally came to me and he said he wanted the plushie. I don't know if you know about the Dreadful Plushies, but the Dreadful Plushies is a website and they make plushies based on different disorders and diagnosis. So I have fibromyalgia. So I have the fibromyalgia bunny and my son wanted a bunny. So I got him the autism bunny. So then he started saying, well, this is the autism bunny and I have autism and you have autism. And I said, yes. And he said, and autism is because I do things differently than others. And I said, well, our brains think differently than others. And so that, you know, how you always tell mommy that I'm the only one that really understands you. And I always get what you're saying and I make things make sense, which is he's been telling me that since he was like 4 years old. I said, that's what that is. And he's like, oh, but we've been talking about autism since his diagnosis at 5. Now that he's 8, he has understanding. So then his brother even said, I wish I was autistic. He was like, and so then I told him, I said, well, buddy, you're ADHD like daddy. So, but that's how we've tackled it. There's a lot of also depending on your children's age too, there's a lot of books out there. And then I'll jump off the floor. There's a lot of books out there for children. So they specifically have the neurodiversity symbol on them. And so I've purchased those. And those also can help educators learn how to support your children in the classroom because it talks about how sometimes to focus, we have to wiggle and we have to move and we have to walk around. And they do have neurodiversity books written by teenagers and their parent for neurodivergent teenagers as well. So just to let you know, I use a lot of literature in what I do.
I want to invite Heather Nicole Saladino to open their mic.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I was just going to say, thank you, everybody. This is a really affirming space. And to your point, Destiny, like I'm really interested in all the books and resources and things out there because one of the things that I've struggled with the most has been not feeling like there is a book. And when people say the way that things are supposed to go, like it doesn't make sense. So I'm always interested in like any resources you have around like affirming spaces like for us to be in. And my husband does peer work. And so so we've been able to find some stuff through that, but like it's hard to be around kids and parents in particular that are not very nice and don't get it. Like I need more spaces where like there's people that have kids who are neurodiverse because people don't get it.
Yeah, so true.
This is Jaya. I was just wondering if I could jump into the previous question and just add a little bit as well to that. the question around neuroaffirming parenting and being a neurodivergent parent, I think that, you know, just adding to what Serenity and Destiny were saying, there's one other piece that I think a lot about is how much just falls on parents as these siloed places of providing all the care. And then we're made to feel bad if we can't meet it, right? So there's a sort of a lack of community and support. But I also have found that in talking to my kids in a way, like it also builds their, we have a problem, and I think at least American culture, where kids feel very centered and very much like they're the focus of everything. So I think there's a way that as a parent sharing, like, this smell is too much for me right now, right? Or this noise is too much for me. It sort of disrupts that entitlement of they're the center of the world, that everything is about children, you know. So it's this fine balance of like not being adultist, but also like teaching our kids that they're just part of a larger community, and that sharing my experience with my kids, I hopefully is building that capacity and empathy for them, that they're part of a bigger web. And I think parents need more support. Like, I know there are 3 folks at least on this call right now who I regularly call just to have support, to talk through things so that I can bring a more regulated presence for my kids. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. This is Lindsey. Heather, I think one of the things that you're naming is kind of a large, you know, and it is topics that we bring to this community around the ways that we are driven towards individualism, which Jaya is naming in this nuclear family unit. And then we go into spaces and we see the type of tokenization that plays out in organizations also play out in neighborhoods, where people go like, oh, I've got my Black friend and my Asian friend and my neurodivergent friend, but no community. No community. And we've talked about often in this group that many of us, we have never experienced community, so then we don't even know how to create it.
Yep.
And so there's something to, I would offer, and this is just coming, I'm bringing, and we talk about this a lot, although we can have target rank identities, the experiences can be similar and vastly different. And so I would never assume relationship or similarity because of my target rank identity. But I'm speaking from an I place, that one of the things that I have done differently than I think my parents felt that they had permission to do is instead of teaching my children to be safe, creating safe communities for them to marinate in, while giving them the tools when they move out from that. Here's what we need to know. Here's how I want you to understand these systems at play, so you don't think you're the problem, the system is the problem. Part of being adults and adult, you know, parents is that sometimes we're still dealing with our own culture of niceness. And you don't have to be fucking nice. You're not in my community. If you can't get with it, you're not in my community. Educate yourself if you want to be in relationship to me. That's my charge to you, Heather. That's the script. Lindsey said I can tell you to get fucked. There was one more question. I saw a hand, and it'll be our last question for the day.
I believe that was Esther.
Esther?
Yes, I was gonna let you skip over me, but I'll just say the question because I'm sure that other people may have that same question. I'm a parent of a child on the autism spectrum, and I've heard so many other adults who are saying that, you know, they've been diagnosed and had it recently, but I found that also many adults who may even want a diagnosis have found that they're just difficulty in finding one a person who is a professional with that kind of experience that can give you that diagnosis, one who is culturally competent, and one who they trust. And, just the fact that also, cost may be also a factor as well. So I just wondered if anyone had any to talk about that aspect, because I think a lot of the parents who have children on the autism spectrum may indeed be on the autism spectrum, but they just don't have a quote diagnosis. So just wanted someone to speak to that.
Yes.
This serenity, all I could say to that is that it's absolutely criminal how difficult it is, how insanely hard it is for people. It's an absolute privilege to be able to get a diagnosis, and that it shouldn't be that way. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. That's all. I wish I had more to add. It's just insane, and it shouldn't be that way. The fact that people need help and care and can't get it is mind-boggling. I don't know if anybody has any suggestions or anything, because it's right now the climate out there is awful. It's incredibly difficult. It's a minefield. Then if you can get into someone, they might not be the right person. They like she said, they might not diagnosed correctly based on race or gender or any number of things, or refused, or say the most ridiculous, absurd things like, oh, you made eye contact, you couldn't possibly be autistic, or you run a business, you couldn't possibly have ADHD, stuff like that. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just a nightmare. I don't know what we can do to fix it, but it's an absolute nightmare. And then you've got people on the other end of the spectrum saying that it's being overdiagnosed, and which is completely not true. The facts don't back that up at all. It's the people who are not being diagnosed that are getting diagnosed, people of color, the other genders, that's what's making up the change, and just exponential population growth as well. But yeah, and even with that, there are still so many being overlooked. People aren't getting the diagnosis they need. They're continuing to live with this grief and shame, and that's just utterly wrong.
Thank you.
This is Destiny. I want to say that I think there are more and more adults, I'm noticing, that because they are late diagnosed, and they are like, so many of us on this call, they're professionals, they have businesses, they work in jobs. And so they are starting to shift. Like, I'm seeing a lot of mental health professionals, for example, shift their practices to accommodate those type of assessments, because they recognize the need for the assessments and doing those things. So I would definitely say my recommendation, if you are seeking out a official diagnosis, is one, if you are a female born and presenting, definitely seek out a female provider, in the sense of that somebody that understands how autism specifically, or whichever your neurodivergence is, presents in that. And so I think one of the things that we often do, and I think any professional on this call can recognize, is we're always seen as the professional, right? So because of that, individuals never question the professional. So they just see someone that assessed or diagnosed, and they just go to them, and they don't ask questions, even though maybe something doesn't feel right when you read the website, or you just have questions. So when you're seeking out an official diagnosis, like, question them. What do they know about neurodivergence? What do they know about neurodiversity? If you are specifically seeking out a specific diagnosis, what do they know about that? How many individuals have they assessed? What are the tools that they're using to assess? All those questions are really going to help you determine if this is the individual for you. Are they culturally competent? Okay. There are, I've come across white providers who are culturally competent in the regard of that they have an understanding of the lack of diagnosis and that disadvantage piece, and they incorporate that. And then being a mental health professional, I've come across many that are not. Okay, so ask those questions when you're seeking out that formal diagnosis for yourself, and, you know, navigate, you know, write them down, because I'm big on that. When I sought out my diagnosis, there is a handbook, and I can't remember who made it. There's a few out there now, but somebody put together all of the tools to self-assess for autism. And of course, if you want a formal diagnosis, you take those still to a professional. But because of that, I did that first, and I actually took all of those to the psychologist. And so that helped when she was navigating the assessments and what tools I needed, because I had already done so many of them. And she was able to look through them and see, yes, this does correlate with an autism diagnosis. And then on top of my son being diagnosed, you know, and that background, it really added, I feel like, extra validity. I did see someone just kind of mention, just because I see it on the end of this, someone mentioned, like, do you need to get a formal diagnosis? And I always say that it depends on the person. I sought it because I actually went through autistic burnout when my son was struggling in school and when he was not diagnosed yet. And I'd never been through that so significantly. And I really wanted to understand the why. And like other female-born presenting individuals who are diagnosed with autism, I had previous diagnosis of depression and anxiety, OCPD. And so when you have all those, you really are still trying to figure out, well, why are the things that I'm being told are supposed to work not working? And so I sought out the diagnosis as like confirmation, as somebody said, that like, I'm not broken and like something's not wrong with me. I just didn't have the right, you know, I just didn't know what it was that was going on to be able to actually accommodate and support it.
This is Lindsey. Just 1 second, Jaya. I think I'm going to give the last comment to Taejas.
Just a quick thing to add. I just wanted to say that also having a formal diagnosis makes it a lot easier to get access to resources. Even if you do know that you are on autistic or ADHD or on are neurodivergent, if it's not like, if there's no file that says it, it's really hard to get access to resources that support you, because it doesn't go recognized.
As we prepare to leave this space that Toren and Serenity and Jaya and Destiny and Taejas have created for us, a few weeks ago, a friend of mine wrote we have a group chat with some friends, and her daughter was diagnosed with ADHD. And all of us came into the chat not thinking about it, like, awesome, congratulations, I'm so happy you got that information. When are we having a party? Like, none of us even thought about that. And then she came back and was crying because that was not the experience that she expected from her mom crew. So many of us are moving through the world thinking still, as a result of our conditioning, that these types of diagnoses are these drastic, terrible things that are being delivered to our friends, to parents, to teenagers, to children. And that's your shit to work through. That's your stuff. You have been conditioned to believe that, and you need to work through that so that we can manifest the world that Taejas and Toren are inviting us to exist in. And it sounds beautiful, Toren and Taejas. It sounds beautiful. You know the work that you have to do, adults. Let us leave here. And young people, thank you for being our wise guides on this journey. Goodbye, everyone.